You're listening to Podium Podcast with former England rugby player Tom May and leading performance coach Simon Hartley. From locker room gossip to fascinating high-performance insights, this is the show that invites some of the biggest names in the world of sport to discuss life on and off the field of play. Podium Podcast is brought to you by True Potential. To find out more, visit www.tpllp.com.
Hi, hello again. It's Simon, flying solo today in the absence of Tom May. Fortunately, though, I am joined by a really fantastic guest. I can remember watching Paula Dunn sprinting in Commonwealth Games, in European Games, World Championships, and fascinated to know not just how she performed as an athlete, but now how she's transitioned out into the world of coaching and now into a high performance director's role. It's going to be a brilliant conversation. Let's dive in. Paula, how are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Thank you very much. I know, obviously, you had a really cracking career as an athlete. Loads of medals, Europeans, Commonwealths. Was there any particular highlight for you in your athletic career?
I think your first major medal is always pretty special. So it was Commonwealth Games 1986 in Edinburgh, and I came away with a gold and a silver and a personal best in 100. So it was like 20, 21. So yeah, that was that was probably memorable because it was the first one.
Yeah, I can well imagine. I mean, how did you get into the sport in the first place? Was it simply a case of went down to the athletics club, loved it and kept going, or picked it up at school? Or...
Yeah, I think most of it I picked up at school. I had a really good primary school teacher who was called Mike Heel. I still remember his name. He told me I was quick. Told me to go down to the local track, and I won the school's competition. Then went on to represent Manchester and won the Manchester schools. And then went on to represent Greater Manchester and won that. Then I left primary school, and over the summer, some of my friends didn't go, so I kind of didn't go, stopped, and then I got picked up again in secondary school when I was 12, going on 13, and that time I got picked up and I stayed there because I met my current coach. So there's a little break, but there's some really good people that kept on encouraging me to actually keep pursuing it.
Did you always dream whilst you were in school of going to major games or representing GB, or was that way off your radar?
Absolutely not. I had no idea. No, I was just a kid growing up in a council estate, so there was nobody around me who was doing anything sporty or reaching those heights. So no, and I probably didn't even think about it till I was about 18, 19, when I started really training properly. And my coach had always said to me, he felt I could do it, but you have to come to terms with your own head. That you can actually do it. And then I really committed and knuckled down, and then from there it kind of built up into getting internationals and then getting selected for championships.
That's really interesting that you describe it that way, getting to terms with your own head, because I know that there are loads of kids who, they take athletics very seriously, they take their sport very seriously through their teenage years, and yet the ones that actually go on to make it as a senior athlete or make it professionally, it's a tiny percentage, and there's something, some barrier usually for many of them. What do you think the barrier is for most, from your experience, and how do you get through it?
It's just hard work. So anything you do is hard work. I think I was really lucky because my parents were really laid back, as in, I wasn't getting pushed. Once I committed, then my parents were like, you commit properly. But up until then, I was just really just enjoying the sport. I wasn't training. I was training 2 or 3 times a week. So I think for me, it was just the enjoyment factor. Then I got to an age where I could make the decision mentally and physically whether I wanted to commit to it. And I think sometimes when you're very young and you're very talented, your parents are doing all of those, making those big decisions. And then when you get to an age when you can make a decision, maybe it just wasn't for you, or maybe the enjoyment factor has gone out of it. So I think I was really fortunate. From a big family, I've got 4 brothers. I'm the smallest person in the family. I'm a middle child. So it was always about being quite competitive in the household. But yeah, it was generally, I just kind of did it when I felt ready to commit. And I think I was just at the right age and circumstances just aligned that made it possible for me.
Mm. Do you know, that rings true in my experience. I've seen so many athletes who probably get to that stage of being 17, 18, 19, and by that stage they're completely burned out by the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Maybe because they've overtrained, but also because people have been piling pressure on them, or that's what they perceive anyway. And they get to the point of thinking, I just don't want to do this anymore.
And it's, yeah, and you know, the job I've done, because I worked for 21 years at UK Athletics, and we talked about talent identification and recruitment, and it's those big transitional years which are really critical, going from a junior to senior, leaving home, going to university. So where you have to take responsibility, it's like, is this the direction you want to do? So I totally understand it, and yeah, it is all about the athlete. You know, you want really committed parents, but you want them to be parents, not pseudo coaches. Um, you know, I've got two boys, and I used to have to remind myself when they were doing their sports, like when they got in the car, they just wanted mum. They didn't want me to be doing an analysis of what the breakdown of the game. So I was just mum, just there, you know, good, bad, or indifferent. I was just very consistent. Um, so I just think it's really easy to get so involved. Like by default you lose your role as a parent and become more, as I say, like a coach, and you don't need a coach because you've already got one. But it's just a tough slog. Whatever sport where you're destined to reach the top, it's just hard work and being quite resilient, because there's going to be lots of downtimes, you know, injuries, you know, poor performances, and it's just having that ability to keep bouncing back. So yeah, it's just tough. Every sport's got the same hardships.
Yeah, yeah. When you talk about that need, when you started to take it seriously and move towards being a senior athlete, how you got your head into the right space, what changed in your thinking at that time?
You know, it was there was a couple of things. I had a really good training session where there was a girl called Julie used to do this hill session, and she used to be miles away from everybody. And I just said to myself on a Thursday night, I'm going to keep up with her for as long as possible and see what happens. And I did, and I kept on just going and going. And that just showed me actually a lot of it's just mind over matter, because before that I kept thinking, there's no way I can do it. It's too far. It's too hard. So that was the one session where I kind of thought, actually, I'm actually quite good at this session. And then I had a really good race. It was the Northern Championships. And that race, I was 19, and that race put me like number two in the country. And up until then, I hadn't really thought about, you know, being up there with the really good athletes that you saw on TV. And then around this time, that made me one of those people. So there was those things that just happened. And then you just kind of have a bit of a switch of mind. Your processes change. You know, you set your goals a little bit different, and then you've got a really good people around you who are really encouraging you. So yeah, it was literally a
Mm.
training session and a race that really kind of fired me up.
We hope you don't mind us interrupting the show with a very short message about our partners at the Podium podcast, True Potential. True Potential provide wealth management that's simple, effective, and unique. Their expert advice, innovative investments, leading technology, and dedicated support are all designed to help you do more with your money. Visit www.tpllp.com now to find out more. Capital at risk. True Potential Wealth Management and True Potential Investments are authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Thanks for listening. Now, let's get you back to this week's show. I've reflected with quite a few people over the years about that phrase, you need to believe before you can achieve. And I think that belief is incredibly powerful, but as you've just alluded to, I think there's a stage before it, which is commitment.
So
And if you commit, then you probably create something that you can then believe in.
absolutely. And I'm quite a visual person. So I had to do something for me because it was all about whether I could accept that I could, you know, be a success in the sport I wanted to do. So for me, it's quite data driven. I knew what I needed to do. People could tell you as much, but like you say, I committed. I got a good response, and then that made me believe and increase my confidence. And again, it's just a bit of a cycle. You keep doing that, and you just keep moving the boundaries further and further away. So I believe that that's definitely what I that experience. I somebody telling me I was good was never going to do it for me. I had to accept it, and I needed proof as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Obviously, I'm not very
absolutely.
trustworthy.
I know, I mean, in my experience, that's where confidence comes from. It comes from evidence. It doesn't come from pep talks or someone else's
Yeah,
opinion. It comes from
absolutely.
evidence.
Yeah.
So you have to create that evidence that allows you to believe. Yeah. Um, you also mentioned when through the course of your career, when you became a senior athlete, that there were a load of challenges that come along the way, whether it's loss of form, injury, whatever. What were your biggest through your career?
I think there's a number. So obviously, I was competing pre-lottery, so I had to work. So
Mm,
managing and balancing work, family life, social life. Then I got married, and then I had a child, and it was balancing. Then being working, being a mum, being an athlete. So I don't think there's anything special, but for me, it was just that balancing of everything. I think the athletes now, and they're going to hate me for saying this, but they are incredibly lucky because it's not
mm,
the finance that was critical; it's the support. The physio, the doctors, the nutritionalists, all those things which are really difficult to find when you're by yourself. Functioning as a small team in Manchester. So to me, that's the key to our success is the access to services and the ability to not work or limit the hours you're working is such a positive. Because a lot of the time I was just severely anemic and it was just because I was tired. Trying to do too much. And the advice. You know what to eat and to eat well, but as an athlete, you have to be very very purposeful in what you eat and when you eat. And so obviously I had no knowledge of that, nor did my coach. You read and picked up information. Um, so to me, those were the hard bits to manage yourself. The training is actually not too bad. Actually, doing the
mm.
physical training, access to the track, access to the gym, we could always cover that. But it was all those extremities which had a difference between, a gold and a silver finalist and a medalist, and those really fine margins. At the time, I didn't even understand. But now I've worked in this arena for 20 odd years. I know how important it is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned your work with UK athletics, and I know you've done quite a lot on the Paralympic
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
How did your experience as an athlete prepare you, or give you a platform for working back in the sport?
Well, I had no intention to coach or to work for a governing body. So I had worked and was doing sports development in Manchester. I was really happy working in schools, getting kids into clubs, generally primary school children. Manchester is quite a highly deprived area, but I actually loved it working with tough kids, challenging kids. Very similar to my own background and getting them into the clubs and seeing them flourish and develop. And then I started coaching just by default because my coach told me I needed to go and do some cover at the track, and it's a voluntary system coaching, and I felt I should give back. Um, and I was planning to go for 6 weeks and to cover while a coach was off, and then I ended up coaching. I'm still coaching today, so it's kind of you get sucked into it. And then I identified and had some success locally. I had some junior international, a senior international, who went to the Commonwealth Games in Manchester, and then there was a job that came up, and somebody said, "Have you seen this job?" I hadn't really thought about it because it was in Birmingham. I live in Manchester. At that time, I was a single parent, so it wasn't on the books. But then I had a conversation, and we talked about the potentially to commute, come down, spend 3 days a week, apply for the job, and got it 21 years
Mm.
ago. And then
Wow.
then panicked about how I was going to actually physically do it all. But then I did that before I got the job. Then panicked a little bit, but obviously coped well doing it all.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of people that I speak to that have found a career in coaching kind of say they fell into it in some way. It
Definitely
sounds
fell
like
into it.
fairly
Definitely,
similar with your
yeah.
story. Did you find a love for it along the way as well?
Oh, I absolutely. I think the love was like I kind of love watching athletes achieve their full potential. So that's for them then to realize that they're good. I think it's that slow realization when, because I generally got them when they're like 14, 15, 16, the training and training, they're getting some success. And then realizing and coming to me and go, actually, I'm going to try and go for the World Juniors. Actually, and then once they said that, I'm like all over it. I'm like, absolutely. And we planned it. So I think
Mm.
it's just watching athletes flourish and then achieve. I was lucky. So some people do it, because it's, you always say coaching is very selfless, and being an athlete, you've got to be selfish. Um, so I'd done all these years as an athlete and loved it at the time. So coaching was nice because I was really behind the scenes and just giving them the opportunity to go and shine on the big stage, or whatever stage was their biggest stage. And so no, I actually grew to love it. I still love it because I've just come back from Loughborough yesterday, even though I'm not working, because I had a couple of girls competing who did very well. So you still get a nice little buzz watching people competing and achieving well.
Yeah. How different is your experiences of working as an athlete in a program that wasn't supported compared to working in a coaching environment that is supported? I mean, how differently do those environments look?
I always get asked this question, and it's like the bonuses are great. You get access to, as I said, great support services. When you're on program, you get access to some funding. Um, but everything brings different pressures. So I get the pressure of managing work, and now people have got the pressure of managing being on program and having to, hit goals. So there's different sorts of pressures, whatever system you're functioning. I just say see the positives. If you can get support, that's a positive. Don't see it as a hindrance. Don't see it as pressure. Just see it as a really positive experience. So it's like, yeah, the bonus to me, the benefits outweigh the negatives. But it's easy for me to say because I'm sitting on the other side.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the other thing that I've seen from, a sort of a detached vantage point over the years is, yeah, there's more support around the Olympic programs, which is brilliant, but the Paralympic programs have transformed.
Absolutely. It's amazing. I went into the Paralympic landscape in 2009. So it was just before going to London 3 years out. And literally, it is night and day. How
Mm.
people see Paralympic athletes, how the sport of definitely para athletics has evolved, how we now like totally integrated in some of our Olympic programs, night and day. So it was really nice to be involved when it was definitely the start in the UK, and then to turn around and be world leaders in that area. It's been, yeah, it was really exciting. Hard because you're breaking boundaries, and then obviously expectations increase, and so. But I prefer that than the reverse. So no, it's been amazing working in that program.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, you're kind of continuing that passion now in your current role, I'm guessing. Working with wheelchair rugby, yeah?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm on the board, and I went down to watch the European Championships there a couple of weeks in Cardiff, which
Mm.
was amazing. And yeah, I've just grown to love it. I'm seeing one of the head coach tomorrow. Um, so yeah, I kept my fingers in definitely the Paralympic landscape and definitely the top end, the elite. And so yeah, I keep getting little fixes. Probably that's why. It's probably I'm okay because I am getting little fixes off sport all the time throughout, even though I'm not physically working at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. So you've been an athlete, you've worked as a coach, and the current role looks like it's more sort of performance strategy. Um, so what are the transferable elements that allow you to, use experience as an athlete to help you coach and now on a more of a sort of performance director kind of,
Yeah.
level?
Do you know what? I literally think it's that ability to be really disciplined, um, and the ability to work really hard. And I'm definitely a perfectionist. I set myself targets, just like when I was an athlete, I've got goals. I love working with a team. I love pulling together a great team of people who have all got the same, passion. We're all on the same page. So I definitely used all the qualities, which I didn't even know I had. I literally thought everybody was disciplined. Everybody was very
Mm,
committed. Um, everybody works hard. But it sounds really easy, but those, being able to train, be really resilient and training when you don't want to train, when you're really tired, working full time and then, training 6 days a week, twice a day, some days. I just think it give you qualities that you don't even know you possess, that you can actually just fall back on, you know. So for me, I see it as a privilege when I'm working at a championships, you know, going to the championships, watching those athletes achieve. Um, but it's tough, you know, very long days. But I just think that's brilliant. Some people find it really, really hard, but like to me, that's the aim of the job. What we do, you know, everything's just like a build up. It's like to me, it's like you know, being a director of a play. Like you do all the hard work, and then you watch the play on opening night, and all you can do is sit back and like you've done as much as possible, keep your fingers crossed, and hope to perform well. And it's the same for us, you know, ultimately it's the athletes who've got to go out there and compete, and we've just got to make sure we add value to everything they've done along the way to make success, you know, put this, you know, increase the percentage of success in happening when we need it to happen. So I just think, yeah, it's just the qualities that I don't even see them as qualities because they're just things that I just do automatically. But when people ask me, I just think I've got a capacity to work very hard, very long, and I'm just very resilient. You know, you can throw things at me, and the job's been tough at times, but I still have to go out the next day, smile, and carry on. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's just me by nature. So I definitely think being an athlete and overcoming lots of things, obstacles, has definitely helps.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, those qualities that you're talking about, discipline and resilience, uh, you've got control over those when you're an athlete. You can be more disciplined, and you can learn the resilience. But when you're a coach, you can't do it for the athlete.
So
And when you're a performance
yeah,
director or working in a high performance environment, you can't necessarily do that for the environment. So how as a coach do you help develop that in athletes?
do you know that's really good, and that's one thing I would definitely say I've learned. How to transfer information, but also try and not make it or expect people to do it exactly like I have done it. And I think it's going back to making sure you've got a clear vision. The athletes, you're there for the athletes. Find out what their goals are, and making sure that we always stay on task for those goals. Understand there's going to be peaks and troughs, but also making sure that we add value to everything they do because it is their dream, it's their desire, their goals, and we are helping them to achieve that. And sometimes you have to remind people what those are, especially over a cycle, over a 4 year period, and sometimes you have to take a step back, um, because that's going to be beneficial. But yeah, it's definitely harder, because
Mm.
you don't have the control. There's a big element of trust. If I said I was going to do a training session, I knew I was going to do a training session. You have to trust that the person's going to do it. But like on the same side, it's like, I look at what I was like, and if they've now made that decision and taken that responsibility and accountable that they want to be the success in their sport, you have to trust them to do what they said they're going to do. So it does definitely takes time. I'm not going to say it was easy, but I've definitely learned the time to work in a team, to accept that the coach and athlete, it's their dream. We're there to add value, to check and challenge, but overall to be supportive of their goals.
Yeah. So when you're working on the level that you are now, where you're not necessarily coaching, but you're trying to build all of this into an environment, a high performance environment, how does that change? How do you build the environment so that it's got discipline and resilience and all the other qualities that you need?
Yeah, and I think I always say the environment's the most important thing because if it's toxic, it doesn't work.
Mm.
You've got to get buy-in from everybody. So every coach, every support staff is having that buy-in, and that for me is having a really clear vision of how we're going to work, and let's say how we're going to work and how we're going to work together. And I always say, one of the things I say constantly is like we've got to talk to each other, not about each other. Be really
Yeah.
open with each other. If somebody's upset, be really clear. I'm really clear about expectations about how we operate together, clarity around behaviours. I don't shout at athletes, so I'm not expecting athletes or coaches to shout at me. I will always respond to everybody when I say within 12 hours, and so it's being very clear and then delivering everything you say you're going to deliver. Um, but so I always say the role of the governing body and myself and that team is to create that culture that is supportive, but also is very clear what we are going to do and what is acceptable and not acceptable for everybody, not just athletes, but athletes and staff, because the environment's key for success. If it's toxic, it doesn't work. It's just generally like you've got a group of 80 people together. There's got to be some ground rules how you're going to operate, and that comes from the person at the top. The leader has to set that vision and clarity about that environment. And I'm generally quite light-hearted, so
Mm,
ultimately I have to remind everybody, and it does sometimes feel like we are, but we're not saving lives. It's a sport.
yeah,
Sometimes,
yeah.
sometimes you have to just put it in perspective. Yes, there's going to be disappointment, but nobody's going to die. So it's
Mm,
just putting things in perspective. Yes, there might be some disappointment, um, but ultimately, as long as we all walk out healthy, physically and emotionally, then we can come back another day. So my role was for the last few years has always been setting that culture and that environment and making sure we create the environment that athletes feel comfortable, and then they go out there and show the best version of themselves.
yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree. I think in elite sport, too often we can get too caught up in today's win or loss,
It's so true.
lose sight of that whole bigger picture. Yeah.
I know.
No, yeah, you've done one transition, so transition from athlete into coach. You're now doing another transition from coach into, well, what is the next chapter? What does it look
I
like
don't
for you?
actually know, so this is the first time in my life where I've actually taken a break. Obviously I had two children, so I took a break for the kids, but this is the time where I'm taking a step back to see what I want to do next. And I was physically and quite tired after doing three Paralympics, 2012, 2016, 2020, which then became 2021. And then in my
Mm,
final year, I was team lead on the Olympic program. Last year was a busy year, and I took it on knowing that I was going to stop and take a break. I'm kind of a bit like, kind of believe like in fate. So something will come up that is supposed to be for me. So I'm just going to have to wait and see, which is not very
yeah,
like me. But I'm just enjoying the time at the moment that I've never had at home, and relaxing and just kind of recharging after working so long, and commuting from Manchester to Birmingham and Loughborough for 21 years has been tough. So my youngest child now is at Leeds. He's gone off, so he felt like a really good time. So I literally don't know what I've got next, but something will come along.
yeah, absolutely brilliant. And what a lovely position to be in where you can just sort of
I
cast the net.
know, I know. I like to say if the mortgage wasn't paid, I would not have been able to leave my job. So there is circumstances, financially we're in a really good position. So
Mm,
obviously I'm just really fortunate. If that wasn't the case, I would have stayed on and worked. But it seemed like circumstances were just in our favour to do it. And I think pre-COVID, post-COVID, sorry, like it gave me time to think about quality of life and family. My mum's getting older, and and she just gave me time for the first time to like look at the quality of my life and make some quite big decisions. Sounds quite
yeah,
deep. That it wasn't that deep. But and for the first time, and I think it wasn't just me. I'm sure there was a lot of people. During COVID, you had time for the first time to say, where do you want to be? In 5 years' time. So it gave me that break the first time to decide what I wanted to do next.
brilliant. At the end of these shows, there's always four questions. Tom usually asks them, but of course he's not here.
But you've been
This
really
one,
good, Simon, anyway.
oh well, thank you very much. Um, the first question actually kind of links into the last question, which is if you hadn't become a professional athlete or sort of taken athletics to that senior international level, what would you have done? What would your focus have been? Is there something else that interested you that would have created a different path for you?
So I've always been quite a caring. So I was going to be a nurse. My mum's a nurse, but I literally couldn't do that job. I don't like blood. I don't like gore, so that didn't work out. And then I was looking at social work, so I probably would have gone more line in a caring social work pathway if I didn't become an athlete. But coaching, you're still in that kind of nurturing
Mm,
environment, so it's not too far away from where I probably wanted to be.
fantastic. Second question is, if you had a few quid to invest, maybe a few numbers came up on the lottery or something like that, what would you invest it into? Is there anything, art or?
Do you know, I do like a bit of art, but it sounds a bit, oh, this sounds a bit creepy, but it isn't. Like, if I had some money, it's like, because I'm at the track, I would probably invest it in some of these kids, you know,
Brilliant.
just to make life a little bit easier, pair of spikes here, a tracksuit there, because, financially things are so hard at the moment. I probably would say that like 5 or 6 kids who'd invest it in and, give them a hand. A small gesture goes a long way. So probably we look at people to invest it in rather than things.
Yeah, like you say, actually, for some of these kids, a little bit of money makes a huge difference,
Such
doesn't
a huge difference. I remember I got £250 from Sports Aid, and that could have been 2,500. That's how important it was for me. It got
it?
me. It gave me spikes, trainers, and a tracksuit every year for 3 years. So it was
Yeah.
really important. So, to other people, it wouldn't seem very much, but for me, it was definitely a godsend. And I know for other athletes, that's been the case as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Question 3. Who do you most admire in sport and in business?
So for sport, I would probably go like this is going to be like my old boss Peter Eriksson. It was so good. He's the one that probably I've been quite lucky. I've seen people have seen something, but he's the one who gave me an opportunity in the para program, even though I
Mm,
had no para knowledge, because he just wanted a coach and he felt like if he spent some time with me, I could do really well. So I think him giving me that opportunity. So I absolutely is going to be a really important person to me. And business, I don't really have anybody in business really. I do like when athletes have got the ability to go into other areas. I think that's a really good skill. So you're successful in that and they've been able to go to other areas. So just generally athletes who have been able to have a great career in one area and actually then build another career. I think that's really admirable because doing it once is hard enough. And doing it twice and being successful twice is definitely credit to those people.
yeah, I absolutely agree. Final question, and probably the trickiest question of the lot. If you could only watch one movie for the rest of your life, what would you pick?
This was so hard. So I went with Sister Act 2. And
Oh,
the, re-
brilliant.
the reason I had to go see that, my oldest son, Kane, loved it. And we got the video, and every time he had to do a sleepover, he took Sister Act 2 with him to my sisters, to my mum, and we watch it every year at Christmas when it comes on. Even though he doesn't live at me, if it's on, he'll ring me to say, Mum, Sister Act 2's on. So we know it exactly by heart. So if I had to watch one film, it would be that one.
That's brilliant. Brilliant. Paula, it's been wonderful chatting to you. Thank you very, very much
Oh, my
indeed.
pleasure. And the same, Simon, here.
Have a great week. Take care.
Thank you. And same to you. Bye.
You're listening to Podium Podcast with former England rugby player Tom May and leading performance coach Simon Hartley. From locker room gossip to fascinating high-performance insights, this is the show that invites some of the biggest names in the world of sport to discuss life on and off the field of play. Podium Podcast is brought to you by True Potential. To find out more, visit www.tpllp.com.